There are words you can speak that vanish into the air. And then there are words that don't just land in someone's ears, they stay in their soul. For someone who pulls away, for someone who hides behind walls of independence, there's always one message that lingers. And it's not the message that begs or demands or clings. It's the message that awakens something deeper inside them, the reminder that they are seen, that they are enough, even as they are. What makes this so powerful is that most people chase. They say too much, they try to close the gap with force. But love is never about force, it's about presence. It's about planting one truth so strong, so undeniable, that even in their silence they can't escape it. That message is not, I need you. It is not, why aren't you here? The message that stays on their mind is the one that says, I see who you are. And who you are is enough. Imagine the weight lifted when someone who fears closeness reads words that don't trap them, but free them. Imagine the power of a message that gives space, yet still radiates warmth. When you send words like that, you're not pushing, you're not chasing, you're anchoring. You're leaving something in their heart that they return to when the noise of life quiets down. That's what transformation looks like. It's not in the argument, it's not in the chase, it's in the truth that echoes. A truth spoken once can stay alive for years inside someone's spirit. And here's the secret: when your words come from a place of certainty, of love without conditions, they don't just remember it, they feel it. It becomes the one message they replay in their mind when they're alone at night. So what do you want your words to do? Do you want them to pressure and push only to be forgotten tomorrow? Or do you want to plant something eternal, something that says, you are seen, you are valued, you are enough? That is the one message that an avoidant can never shake off. It's the seed that grows quietly in their silence. And it is the message that draws them closer, not because you forced them, but because you reminded them of who they already are. Avoidants never forget the message that awakens their longing for connection without pressuring them. That truth is so important to understand, because what lingers in the human heart is rarely the demand or the push. It's the whisper of recognition, the gentle reminder that beneath all the armor, there's a soul that longs to be met. When someone is wired to protect themselves from closeness, they spend most of their lives running from vulnerability. They tell themselves they're fine alone. They convince the world they don't need anyone. And yet inside, there's a quiet hunger that never really goes away. That hunger is not for someone to control them, not for someone to tell them what to do, but for someone to remind them that connection can exist without suffocation. When you send a message that speaks to that longing, it doesn't land like every other text or phrase that gets brushed aside. It sinks in, it stays, it works its way into their mind because it touches the very thing they've tried to bury, the deep, undeniable truth that they want to feel close to someone, but they're terrified of losing themselves in the process. Most people approach avoidance the wrong way. They push for closeness. They write words dripping with urgency, hoping to break down the wall in one blow. And what happens? The avoidant recoils. They feel pressured. They feel like their freedom is being threatened, and their instinct is to run further. That's why the majority of messages disappear into the void, never to be remembered, never to be felt again. But the rare message that awakens longing does the opposite. It doesn't demand closeness. It respects distance. It doesn't beg for love. It reflects love. It doesn't try to change who they are. It honors who they already are. That kind of message is unforgettable because it disarms the defenses without ever trying to break them down. It says, you're safe here. You don't have to be anyone but yourself. I see you. That is the language the avoidant never forgets. It's like planting a seed in their subconscious. They might not water it today. They might not acknowledge it tomorrow. But sooner or later, in the quiet of their own solitude, they will revisit those words. There's power and restraint in saying less but with more depth. A message that awakens longing doesn't need to be long or poetic. It doesn't need to be filled with promises or expectations. It's often simple, almost ordinary on the surface, but extraordinary in its essence because it carries truth. It's a statement that says, I care, but I don't cling. I want you. I don't need to trap you. That paradox is magnetic to someone who fears being consumed. They read it, and part of them breathes easier. And even though they might not respond, those words replay in their mind when no one else is around. Think of it like a song lyric that gets stuck in your head. You didn't choose it. You didn't try to memorize it. It just imprinted itself because it carried rhythm and resonance. That's what happens with the right message to an avoidant. It imprints itself, not because of pressure, but because of resonance. It calls to the part of them that wants connection, but is too scared to admit it. It whispers to their longing in a way that makes them feel understood without being cornered. And because that experience is so rare for them, they don't forget it. Most people don't realize the weight their words carry. They think the louder they speak, the more they'll be remembered. But with someone who protects themselves, it's the opposite. The quieter, truer, freer messages, the deeper it embeds in their memory. That's the paradox of love for someone who runs from closeness. You don't chase them into remembering you. You give them a reason to never forget you by offering what no one else does: connection without pressure, presence without demand, love without fear. The words that stay in their mind are those that affirm their worth, not those that demand closeness. At the core of every human being lies the need to feel valued, to feel recognized not for what they do or how well they perform, but for simply being who they are. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this need often goes unmet. They've spent years hiding behind masks of self-sufficiency, independence, and control. They've trained themselves to believe that needing validation is weakness, that to lean on another is to invite disappointment. And yet, beneath that exterior lies a fragile heart that longs, just like anyone else, to hear the words, "You matter. You are enough." That kind of affirmation strikes chords that never stop reverberating. Most people, when they try to reach someone who distances themselves, get caught in the trap of asking, pressing, or demanding more closeness. They write things like, "Why don't you ever open up? Why can't you love me the way I love you? When will you change?" While these messages may come from a place of pain, they carry a subtext that says, "You're not enough as you are. You must be different for me to love you." And that message, even if unintentional, reinforces the very wound that keeps avoidants from opening their hearts. It tells them that their walls, their struggles, their independence are flaws that must be fixed. The moment they sense that pressure, they don't hear love, they hear judgment. And judgment is the quickest way to push them further into silence. The words that last, however, are radically different. They are words of affirmation that carry no agenda. When you tell someone, "I value the way you see the world," or "I respect how strong you've had to be," or simply, "I like you just as you are," you give them the gift of worth without condition. You're not asking them to open up. You're not demanding they show more affection. You're affirming their inherent value, and that's the language that penetrates the deepest barriers. That's the voice they replay in their heads because it contradicts the story they've been telling themselves, that they are too much, too distant, too broken to be loved as they are. Think of how powerful it is when someone who has built their entire identity around being unreachable suddenly hears words that don't try to reach but instead honor the space. It's like standing in the desert for years and then finding a wellspring. They may not drink from it immediately, but they never forget where it is. That's what affirmation does. It creates a safe place in memory. Even if they resist it in the moment, they revisit it later, and it begins to reshape the way they see themselves. What's important to understand is that affirmation is not flattery. It's not about sugarcoating or pretending. People with avoidant tendencies have a sharp radar for inauthenticity. Empty praise doesn't linger, it evaporates. What stays is truth. When you tell them something real, something you see in them that perhaps no one else has taken the time to acknowledge, that is what pierces the armor. For example, telling someone, "I admire how you take responsibility for your life," is very different from saying, "You're perfect." The first is specific and grounded in truth. The second feels shallow. The grounded affirmation hits the soul. The shallow one bounces off. Another reason affirmations stay in their mind is that they touch the wound without exploiting it. Avoidants often carry childhood experiences of neglect, of being told directly or indirectly that they had to earn love, that they weren't enough as they were. Affirmations counteract that wound by rewriting the script. Instead of, "I'm not enough," the new voice in their head says, "Someone sees me and says I am enough." That kind of message is more powerful than any argument or plea. It doesn't just communicate love, it heals. And when you affirm someone in this way, you give them something they can't easily dismiss. They may try to shake it off, pretend it didn't matter, but the truth always lingers. It circles back in moments of quiet, reminding them that perhaps the story they believed about themselves is not the whole truth. Perhaps they are worthy of love without having to change. Perhaps they can be seen without being controlled. That's the power of affirmation. It's not loud, but it's lasting. It creates a whisper inside their mind that outlives the noise of demands. A single message of calm presence can become an anchor in their inner storm. For someone who lives in a constant push and pull with closeness, the inside world often feels unsettled. They crave intimacy one moment and reject it the next. They long for touch, but when it gets too close, it feels suffocating. That cycle creates a storm within them, a storm of desire and fear, hope and retreat. Most people on the outside only see the walls, the distance, the quiet replies. They don't see the chaos that happens behind closed doors, the overthinking, the self-doubt, the endless questioning of whether closeness is safe. And because that storm is exhausting, what becomes unforgettable to them is the rare experience of calm, of someone sending words that don't stir the storm but soothe it. When you send a message that radiates calm presence, it doesn't fight their storm with more intensity. It doesn't try to match their distance with urgency. It doesn't say, "Why are you doing this? Why can't you just let me in?" Those words might be true expressions of frustration, but to the avoidant, they are like throwing fuel into the fire. They intensify the storm. They make the fear of being overwhelmed stronger. But imagine instead receiving a message that says, I'm here, no rush, no pressure. Those simple words cut through the chaos not by challenging it, but by grounding it. They give the avoidant a sense that they can breathe, that closeness doesn't have to feel like a trap. Calm presence is powerful because it's so rare. In a world where everyone demands attention instantly, where urgency is disguised as love, someone who offers peace stands out like a lighthouse in the middle of a raging sea. A lighthouse doesn't chase the ship, doesn't scream at the waves, doesn't demand the storm to end. It just shines steadily, offering direction and safety. That's exactly what a calm, grounded message does. It becomes an anchor, a point of reference in their mind that they return to whenever the storm feels too strong. Even if they don't respond immediately, those words replay later, offering them a sense of safety they didn't know they could feel with another person. The reason this works so deeply is that avoidants fear losing control. They associate intimacy with losing their freedom, with drowning in another person's needs. When they receive a message of calm presence, it sends the opposite signal: you are free, and yet you are not alone. That paradox disarms them. It tells them that connection doesn't equal chaos. It shows them that love can exist without pressure. And because that's such a foreign experience, it becomes unforgettable. It's not just a text they scroll past, it becomes a mental anchor, a reminder that there is a different way to experience closeness, one that doesn't demand they sacrifice themselves. What's beautiful is that calm presence doesn't require grand gestures. It's not about saying everything perfectly. It's about the energy behind the words. If your energy is grounded, if your heart is steady, your words will carry that resonance. Even a short line spoken with genuine calm carries more power than paragraphs filled with urgency. And when they feel that, they can't help but remember it, because in their storm, calm feels like home. That's why a single message, when delivered with peace, can echo longer than 1,000 frantic attempts to be heard. It gives them something stable to hold on to, even if they don't admit it. It's the reminder that no matter how loud the storm gets inside, there is still an anchor waiting for them outside. And anchors aren't forgotten. They are returned to over and over again. Clarity and compassion plant seeds that grow in their silence, even if they don't respond right away. When you're dealing with someone who distances themselves, it's easy to get caught in the trap of reading silence as rejection. You send a message, they don't reply, and immediately the mind spirals into stories they don't care. They don't want you, they've moved on. But that isn't always the truth. With an avoidant, silence is often the shield they use to regulate themselves, to create a sense of safety when emotions feel overwhelming. It's not that your words didn't land, it's that they need space to process them. And this is where clarity and compassion become powerful. When your message is both clear in intention and compassionate in tone, it becomes like a seed planted in their inner world. They may not water it immediately, but in their quiet moments, they will revisit it. Clarity matters because it removes the confusion that avoidants often fear. When communication feels heavy with hidden meaning, with guilt, or with emotional traps, it sends their defenses skyrocketing. But when you express yourself with honesty and simplicity, without manipulation or pressure, it feels safe. They can hold on to the words without the burden of trying to decode them. A message like, I appreciate you and I hope you're doing well, is clear. There's no hidden demand. There's no coded expectation. It says what it means. And because it's clear, it's not threatening. Clarity is respect. It respects their need for space, and it respects your own need to communicate with integrity. Compassion is what gives those words life. Without compassion, clarity can come across as cold or detached. Avoidants are often deeply sensitive beneath their distance. They may appear composed on the surface, but they carry wounds of not being understood, of being left alone with their emotions. When your clarity is infused with compassion, you're not just delivering information, you're offering warmth. You're saying, I see your struggle, and I'm not here to judge it. I understand you need space, and I honor that. That kind of compassion is rare for them. Most people react to their distance with anger or fear, not with understanding. And when you show compassion, it sets your words apart. The beautiful thing is that seeds don't grow overnight. You don't plant them and wake up to a full tree. You trust the process. With avoidance, your words may sit quietly in their mind for days, weeks, even months before they sprout into realization. Silence is not emptiness. It's the soil in which the seed rests. They may not reply to your compassionate clarity today, but that doesn't mean they've forgotten it. In fact, those are often the words they replay later when no one else is around. They remember them because they didn't carry pressure. They carry truth and care. It's important to recognize that silence itself is a form of communication. Just because they don't respond outwardly doesn't mean nothing is happening inwardly. Sometimes the deepest transformations occur in silence. Your words echo in their mind while they process what it means to be loved without expectation. That echo can change the way they perceive relationships. It can soften their defenses, not because you forced them, but because you offered them something safe to hold on to. When you combine clarity with compassion, you create messages that are unforgettable. They are remembered not as demands, but as gifts. And while you may feel tempted to push for a reaction, the wiser path is to trust the process, to trust that the seed you've planted will grow in its own time. Seeds never grow faster by being pulled out of the ground. They grow by being left in the soil, given space, given patience. In the same way, your words, if they carry clarity and compassion, will grow in their silence. The message that lasts is not about changing them, but about reminding them they are already enough. At the heart of every person who struggles with closeness lies the fear that who they are is not acceptable, that their love is not enough, that their way of being will always disappoint someone. They've spent years building walls, not because they don't care, but because they've learned to equate intimacy with judgment. Somewhere along the line, they were made to feel that they had to be different, more expressive, more affectionate, more open, before they could be truly loved. That belief sits deep in their nervous system, shaping how they relate to others. And because of it, messages that demand change feel like confirmation of their greatest fear. They read them and think, here it is again, I am not enough. That's why those words are forgotten quickly. They don't inspire connection, they reinforce shame. But when you send a message that reflects back their worth, that affirms their value exactly as they are, it interrupts the cycle. It doesn't feed the story of unworthiness, it rewrites it. When you tell someone, I love the way you see the world, or I appreciate your strength, you are not asking them to be different. You are reminding them that who they are right now has meaning. And because that experience is so rare for someone who often feels judged, it becomes unforgettable. Those are the words that play in their head long after the moment has passed. Think about the difference between a message that says, why can't you just open up to me? And one that says, I value the way you process things in your own time. The first is a demand for change. It may come from longing, but it translates as rejection. The second is an affirmation of acceptance. It carries no pressure, just recognition. Which one do you think stays longer in their mind? The answer is obvious, because humans at the deepest level are drawn not to demands, but to belonging. We remember the people who made us feel like we didn't have to perform to be loved. The truth is, lasting messages don't try to fix, they remind. They remind someone of their inherent value, of their unshakable worth. And when you communicate in that way, you become more than just another voice in their life. You become the rare person who doesn't try to mold them, who doesn't see them as a project, but as a soul worthy of love in its current form. That's why they replay your words in their head when they're alone. That's why they remember you when the noise of the world fades. Because you gave them something no demand ever could, freedom to be themselves and still feel loved. Affirmation creates safety. Safety opens doors. And safety is what avoidants rarely feel in relationships. They live with a constant tension between wanting closeness and fearing it. The moment they sense judgment or pressure, the walls go up higher. But the moment they sense acceptance, the walls soften. Acceptance doesn't mean tolerating distance without boundaries. It means communicating in a way that reminds them they don't have to become someone else to be worthy of love. That subtle shift is what makes a message last. It's not about the cleverness of your words, the length of your message, or how poetic you sound. It's about the energy behind them. If your words carry the energy of I see you and you are enough, they live on. They stick in the mind not because they are loud, but because they speak to the quietest, most vulnerable place in the heart. And once those words find their way into that place, they cannot be forgotten. They become the message they return to again and again, especially when doubt creeps in. What you send with love and certainty echoes in their heart long after the words are read. Most people underestimate the power of the energy behind their words. They focus on the exact phrasing, the right timing, or the perfect expression, but what lingers is not the structure of the message, it's the spirit it carries. For someone who keeps their guard up, who fears being overwhelmed or consumed by intimacy, words often feel like weapons or obligations. They've been conditioned to expect that love comes with a price tag, that every kind gesture will eventually demand repayment. That's why so many messages fade quickly from their mind. They carry hesitation, fear, or neediness. But the rare message delivered with love and certainty bypasses all their defenses. It lands differently. It resonates. It becomes something they cannot ignore because it's not just words, it's truth anchored in strength. Love on its own can be powerful, but love without certainty can feel unstable. When someone sends words dripping with affection but rooted in insecurity, the avoidant senses it. They feel the undercurrent of anxiety. Do you still love me? Will you leave me? Am I enough for you? And instead of drawing them closer, that uncertainty repels them. It confirms their fear that intimacy equals pressure. But when love is paired with certainty, it transforms everything. A message like, I care for you deeply, and nothing changes that, carries a different weight. It's steady. It's not looking for immediate validation. It's offering a truth without needing anything in return. That kind of love feels safe because it doesn't wobble under the weight of their silence. Certainty is magnetic. It speaks to the deepest part of the avoidance heart, the part that longs for stability but has rarely experienced it. Most of their life, they've been surrounded by unpredictable love. Caregivers who were inconsistent, partners who were demanding, people who professed love one moment and withdrew it the next. Certainty feels foreign to them, almost unbelievable, and that's exactly why it stays with them. When they receive a message rooted in unwavering love, they might not trust it immediately, but they don't forget it. They hold on to it because deep down it gives them hope that love doesn't have to be chaos. The echo of certainty is what gives your words longevity. It's what makes them return in quiet moments to replay your message in their head. They may not reply, they may not even acknowledge it outwardly, but internally those words become a touchstone. In moments of doubt, they revisit them. In times of fear, they measure other voices against them. The certainty you express becomes a benchmark of what safe love feels like. That's the kind of impact a single message can have when it's delivered without fear or neediness. It's also important to understand that certainty doesn't mean arrogance or force. It's not about telling them what to feel or demanding their response. It's about being rooted in your own truth. It's about speaking from a place of abundance instead of lack. When you know your own worth, when you know the value of the love you bring, your words carry a resonance that lingers. They don't come across as pleading or manipulative. They come across as steady, grounded, and true. That is the kind of energy that an avoidant cannot dismiss, no matter how hard they try. The words you send with love and certainty are like a song that never fully leaves the mind. They play softly in the background of their thoughts, resurfacing at unexpected moments. They might hear your message again when they're driving, when they're lying awake at night, or when life feels heavy. And in those moments, it becomes not just your voice, but a reminder of what's possible. It reminds them that love can be steady, that someone can care without control, that connection can exist without fear. That's why certainty matters, because certainty makes your love unforgettable. And so when you step back and look at everything we've uncovered, the truth becomes undeniable. The words that remain, the ones that echo long after they're spoken, are not born from pressure or fear, but from presence, affirmation, compassion, and certainty. They are not about changing someone, but about reminding them of their worth, anchoring them in calm, and planting seeds that grow even in silence. That is how you reach the heart of someone who guards their closeness. It is not through force, but through love delivered with strength and clarity. Carry this truth with you, speak it with conviction, and let it shape the way you love, not just avoidance, but every soul you meet. Thank you for listening. Thank you for opening your heart to these words. And until we meet again, stay strong, stay present, and goodbye for now.